Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing fantastic. Today I wanted to bring you along on another shoot I went on where I experimented using Fujifilm's film simulations and shooting only JPEGs and using in-camera adjustments. I've not really ever shot on JPEGs, and if you've seen any of my other videos, you'd know that I really like to shoot in the RAW format because it means I get a lot of flexibility when it comes to editing. But recently I've been getting a few questions regarding JPEGs and particularly the Fujifilm film simulation and how the JPEGs from the in-cameras look compared to the RAWs. So that's why I thought it'd be a really cool idea to go out and shoot only JPEGs and see how those photos turned out. As you'd expect, I shot these photos all on my Fujifilm X100F. This camera definitely has those inbuilt film simulations, and it really gave me a good opportunity to experiment with these simulations with a familiar setup. Before going on, I wanted to stress to you all that all the photos you're going to see are straight out of camera. The only adjustments you would see are the highlight, shadow, and color tones that I did in camera. And using the simulations. So something to consider when you're looking at them compared to some of my previous RAW photos. I headed down to a really familiar location. Shooting this way was different enough, so I kind of wanted to make sure that the location was a bit easier for me. So I headed down to the beach, and here I started experimenting with the simulations themselves and also getting familiar with making sure I exposed correctly and made sure my photos were, on point. One thing for me I noticed right away was that shooting in JPEG was a bit of a challenge because knowing that I don't have a ton of wiggle room when it came to editing was definitely in the back of my mind when I was shooting. Usually I don't ever think about it, but today knowing I had to nail my composition and my colors in camera was definitely different for me, so it was actually pretty fun. Throughout the shoot, I experimented with the different film simulations, and like I mentioned at the beginning, the Astia Soft was definitely one of my favorites, especially for this location, and mainly because I think it lended itself best to my kind of style. So after settling on this simulation, I kind of stuck with it throughout the day and continued walking around taking photos like I usually would. It was down by the water that I started to experiment with the color, highlight, and shadow tones I mentioned. My work is pretty bright and vibrant, so I kind of thought that, yeah, if I bump the shadow tone up, if I bump the colors up, I might get a bit of that. It definitely helped. Definitely not as much as you would if you were editing, but I kind of experimented here down on the beach with that so I could see what it actually looked like through the EVF, and I was pretty happy with actually bumping them up a little bit. After a bit more walking around and taking photos, I came across the lifeguard tower, which was actually empty. And so I got into a nice position when the light came through and kind of composed an image to test out all the different film simulations. As I run through them here, you can kind of see how each simulation treats the same shot. Definitely the first few were my favorite. I wouldn't really go back to the black and whites, but the Astia Soft again is definitely my favorite from this shot and shoot, but here's kind of like an example of how the film simulations treat the same photo. As the sun continued to set, I started to get the hang of things and I was really enjoying the shoot. So I got a lot more photos that I was happier with. At the start, it was a bit of a confusing battle, but towards the end, when the sun and the light was really good, the photos that were coming out, I was really happy with. So overall, shooting JPEG only was definitely an experience. I'm not gonna say that I'm gonna go back to it or continue shooting in JPEGs. I definitely think, for me at least, that shooting in the RAW format is a great way to, you know, practice my editing, make photos a bit more enhanced than they would straight out of camera. It's definitely something that I'd say for new photographers or people just getting into shooting with Fujis, that you try it out, because it is actually really impressive to see these shots straight out of camera. In saying that though, I do think that I might leave the RAW and JPEG settings set up on my Fujifilm, because I do think the idea of actually taking some photos, and when friends ask for those photos, I can just send them the JPEGs. I don't need to go through and edit them all. That's something I'm going to do, and a little tip if you didn't know you could do that. But that's kind of how I see JPEGs playing a role in my photography style. Overall guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This was definitely a different thing for me, shooting in this mode, but I think it's really important as a photographer to try new things and challenge yourself. So I do hope you like the shots as well as the video itself. If you've got any tips for me, please leave them below. I'm always keen to learn. And if you've got any questions, be sure to message me or leave a comment. I'll do my best to get back to them all. But otherwise guys, I look forward to seeing you in the next one.